Welcome to the second annual Queer Jewish Arts Festival. In addition to celebrating intersectional art, we also want to bring you voices and stories from an array of people in Baltimore who are part of the queer community.
Hi, I'm Timothy David Copney. I am the chair of the Baltimore Playwrights Festival. I'm a member of Bolton Street Synagogue's congregation. I'm a theater maker, a performer, and married to probably the best person in the universe, I'd like to think. My intersectionality has a lot of strands, but the three most important are probably my queerness, my Jewishness, and my being a person of color. For me, my was my desire to become more authentically integrated into the Jewish community, which I managed to do when I became a member of Bolton Street Synagogue last year after my conversion. My what will be is my continued commitment to living the most authentic life I can manage.
Hello and happy Pride! I'm Maytal, and you're probably wondering what is going on here. So I'm actually sitting down to record this video on the first night of Pesach, and I thought what better way to portray the intersection of both my Judaism and my queerness than with a fun, bright, bold, 10 plagues inspired makeup look. I could speak forever on the intersection of Judaism and queerness, but right now I think I'm just gonna let this speak for itself. So thank you so much for including me. I'm honored to be involved.
Hi, my name is Mark Warnick. When I think about my coming out process in 1990, I had a really hard time reconciling being gay and being Jewish. Over the years, those two identities have melded. When I think about the possibilities going forward, I'm really excited about what COVID has brought in kind of an odd way. I think now there's an explosion of online events for the queer Jewish community, and I'm proud to be part of them.
Hi everyone, my name is Rabbi Ariel Platt. I'm the new director of J-Life at the JCC. Welcome to the Queer Jewish Arts Festival. One of the many things that I love about Judaism is Judaism celebrates journeys. For example, Jacob, one of our patriarchs, wrestles with an angel, and some say even himself, to become Israel. Then of course there is the 40-year-long Israelite journey through the desert once they were freed from Egypt to become a people and to reach the promised land. We also have beautiful life cycle rituals and blessings to mark special and everyday moments. We all experience journeys throughout our lives, periods of time that transform us from who we were to who we are and into who we will be. We need the journeys to grow. That is what this festival is all about, celebrating what was and what could be. There are a lot of amazing possibilities out there, so let's celebrate them.
We're coming to you from Owings Mills, Maryland, which is Piscataway and Susquehannock land. We honor the ancestors and living descendants of the Susquehannock and Piscataway peoples and all indigenous peoples throughout the world. As we work towards justice, we acknowledge their stewardship and wisdom then and in our time. We would like to thank our sponsors, local and national, Jewish and non.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Qureshi, and I am the film program director for the Gordon Center for Performing Arts. We're glad you could be here with us this evening for our discussion about Marry Me, However. The film and this discussion are part of the Gordon Center's second annual Queer Jewish Arts Festival, which is sponsored by the grandchildren of Harvey M. and Lynn P. Meyerhoff Philanthropic Fund. We also want to thank our many other supporters and partners, including Eshel, whose founding director is our speaker this evening, Rabbi Steve Greenberg. Before we begin the discussion, I'd like to familiarize you with our Zoom space and format. We appreciate you keeping yourself on mute to eliminate any distracting background noise. First, I'm going to introduce our speaker, who's going to have the floor to share some insights about the film. Then I will pose some of our advanced questions. Time permitting, we will open for additional questions. When we get to that point and we invite questions, please post yours in the chat feature of Zoom. We won't be using the raise hand feature. And while we don't anticipate this, should there be a need to unmute and remute you, we can take care of that for you. I'll be moderating our discussion and asking our guests the advanced questions and those that you do post in the chat. And the speakers are pinned on your screen so that they will appear as the largest. I am pleased to introduce our speaker, Rabbi Steve Greenberg, who served as a senior teaching fellow at the National Jewish Center for Learning and Leadership for over 20 years, from 1986 to 2010. Steve is the first openly gay Orthodox rabbi and a founder of the Jerusalem Open House, the Holy City's LGBTQ plus community center. After coming out publicly in 1999, Rabbi Greenberg appeared in the film Trembling Before God, a documentary about gay and lesbian Orthodox Jews. During the film's release in October 2001, Steve joined the filmmaker Sandy Simcha Dubowski in an outreach project carrying the film across the globe for over 500 post-screening dialogues. Steve is presently the founding director of Eshel, a North American support, education, and advocacy organization for LGBTQ plus Orthodox Jews and their families. He lives in Boston with his husband and daughter, and we thank him profusely for missing the baseball game with them tonight to be here with us. Steve, do you have a few initial thoughts for us before we open to questions? What can you tell us about the film?
Well, firstly, thank you, Sarah, for the invitation to be here. You know, I saw this film about a year ago, and I trust that you found it, if you've seen it, as poignant and thought-provoking as I did. I was so moved by the film that the very next day I got in touch with the producer and director, Rabbi Mordechai Vardi, and I suggested to him that we figure out a way to collaborate to bring the film to North American audiences, and specifically to Orthodox communities here in North America. And that's what happened. We've shepherded the film to over a dozen film festivals and public screenings in Milwaukee and Boston and San Francisco and Cleveland and Toronto and New York City, and we're doing more. And it has been an incredible effort, not only in sharing the film, but in putting together post-screening panels that include American subjects similar to the ones in the film. And I think just to introduce this film's, I think, central challenge, Rabbi Vardi himself would share with you if you were here that, it is pretty unusual for an Orthodox rabbi of a kibbutz to decide to make a film like this. So the first thing you got to know about Rabbi Mordechai Vardi is that he's an unusual character. He's a kibbutz rabbi trained in Orthodox institutions, who was bitten by the movie bug and became a director and producer. He's kind of done other projects, Halakha and others in the Israeli community, in the Israeli kind of movie community, and he would share with you that his awareness of this issue was slow in coming, but was personal. So he had students who he discovered were struggling with this issue early in his career. He shared with me that, and he was open about this, that his two daughters dated men that during their, shidduch dating period shared that they had been attracted to men. and one of his daughters almost married the fellow. And the other didn't consider to, but they they were struggling with what they should do, how they should deal with this. And then he met Tzvi, and he met Tzvi at Beit Sefer Maleh, which is the Jerusalem Film School, and he was moved by Tzvi's story of being a religious Orthodox man, and then divorced with a few children and struggling. And he knew Tzvi to come from a very religious family. His father was a rabbi. He calls him hardcore modern Orthodox family, and he wanted to understand what was this about. And he discovered that this was a phenomenon, not just a single case. And he told Tzvi, if you will agree to join me in this, let's make a film. And that's what happened. And Tzvi opened him up, as did Nadav Schwartz, opened him up to a community of Orthodox gay Jews. And the film emerged, as often documentaries do, almost organically out of those experiences.
Can you tell us how the film has been received in Israel?
Well, so, it isn't finished yet, but the film has been seen in a number of schools. And so that's really exciting that it's gotten there. But early in the process, Rabbi Vardy already saw that it had salience. There was a TV interview when the film first came out, and 5 minutes later, on the news, and 5 minutes later, we got a call from a mother who said, I need to talk to you. So they made they set up a meeting, and seems that her daughter was dating a man, in fact, getting ready to marry within a month, a man who had admitted to being attracted to men. And he said, look, if she's already planned a wedding, I don't know if she wants to talk to me, but I'll definitely share with you and with her the link to the film. But he was right that once the wedding is scheduled a month later, so the young lady never got in contact with him. He also shared with me that, once the film came out, he got numerous emails and phone calls from members of the Haredi community, from the ultra-Orthodox community, who were struggling and who, and he articulates this. If you grow up in an Orthodox setting, particularly in Israel, though we'll talk about this, it is a little different here. The expectations are really clear, and the experiences, the intense religious dedication and the social cohesion of the community is such that it's really hard to figure out how to navigate. So you often spend a lot of time in denial, and you end up playing a role that, is set out before you. The expectations of family and religious community are such that it's really hard to imagine any other future than the ones you've been given. No one's plotting a religiously coherent gay future. So it doesn't exist. So you don't know, there's no way to choose it. And so even in the modern Orthodox community in Israel, there's a lot of willingness to marry anyway. And in the Haredi community, there's certainly, that is happening daily. And the outcome is that there are a lot of very unhappy people in the community that are, struggling with issues that they can't speak about. You can imagine as well that the wives or husbands, in whatever the case may be, are themselves, even if the spouse comes out to them at some point, they're closeted about what they can share, because the information itself could overturn their lives, even if they wouldn't even know how to act upon it. So the film has opened up a space to talk, and it's generated, a lot of conversation. It's some resistance, as you saw in the film, but a lot of conversation that's been very, at least beginning, to be helpful in the Orthodox community in Israel.
So can you tell us, is this social reality of people feeling forced to marry against their orientation playing out similarly or differently here in North America? And how does how do the Israelis that we meet in the film compare with similar folks here in the US and around the world with regards to factors, cultural factors here, including discussion of sexuality is in school, peer pressure, laws against conversion therapy that exists in some states?
That's a lot, but let me just first, I just want to, kind of mark that it is different here. It is. For a bunch of different reasons. The social framework in Israel is really remarkably family and child oriented. It is hard, outside of a little bubble in Tel Aviv, the social expectation of family life is not just in the religious community. I mean, the religious community, it's even stronger, but it's everywhere. One of the unique features of even Tel Aviv's queer embrace of queer identities, the first time that there were Tel Aviv like fully, kind of embraced the queer pride parade and the week around it, I was in Tel Aviv, and I remember there were posters, not of, partying gay people. That did happen in the parade, but the posters in the city were of families, or of two men and their children on a picnic, two women holding, a baby. It's very focused in Israel on continuity. And of course, that is true in America, and certainly true in more traditional Jewish communities, but culturally it's really different here. It's a much more highly individualized cultural reality here. And so I think it's a little less intense, particularly in liberal environments. I don't think that in liberal environments, there's as much pressure to marry early and have a lot of babies. But that is really actually the reality in Israel. So that's one difference. The other difference is that modern Orthodoxy here in America is sectarian, which means to say that it's a small subgroup of American Jews. And often, if you don't fit, you read the tea leaves and decide that you have other spaces to live. You have, some people do choose non-Orthodox Jewish spaces, but the possibility of walking away completely is quite real here, because, that happens even with modern Orthodox families have straight kids who decide that they no longer, they're going to be off the derech. They're not interested in being observant. And so the notion that you can't imagine at all a life outside of Orthodoxy or Orthodox contexts just doesn't appear. People can imagine those spaces, particularly in the more modern Orthodox community. So it happens less, that's for sure. People instead decide to walk away. That is the majority of we Eshel, the organization I run, was a national organization for LGBTQ Orthodox Jews and their family members. We meet with parents. We have support groups for parents, and we have a national conference for parents, which after 2 years we just did recently. And they're, the majority of them have children who are LGBTQ and no longer religious. And so part of their struggle is they're dealing with their LGBTQ kids, but part of it is dealing with the fact that their kids have just given up on tradition. In Israel, religious life is more ubiquitous. It's more common. It's a larger segment of the population. It's closer to a third, and in some cases, depending on how you read Sephardic traditionalism, it could be as much as a half of the country identifies itself religiously. And more than that, I would say even secular Israelis are really focused on, grandchildren and the family frame. And so I think that that's one of the differences, is that the modern Orthodox frame in Israel is just simply more susceptible to the choice to just close your eyes and jump, right? The other thing, though, that has to be made clear is that we, as an organization, we have a warm line, and we get calls from every corner of the American Jewish community, from Haredi Jews, from Jews in the yeshiva community, in the Black Hat yeshiva community, from Hasidic Jews. We had a Hasidic couple that came to our last parent conference because they have a trans child. So we get all that stuff. So in the Haredi community, there is still a great deal of expectation that it kind of has to work out, because I think this is true outside of that community. It's just more true there, is that there's no real adult path without marriage and children. The more traditional you are, the more the markers of finding love and making babies are a kind of testimony to the fact that you've grown up. And there were two gay men who were kind of one was yeshivish, one was Hasidic. They were in their 60s. They davened in a little shtibel in New York. And my memory is that the yeshiva, the synagogue called them the bochrim. They were in their 60s and maybe pushing 70, and they were called the boys. There's an element of infantilization that happens when you do not marry and you do not have children. Now, specifically when you do not marry. And so in the Haredi community, you have to entertain the possibility of really walking away from the only world you've ever known, and the only world in which you have social salience, the only world where you can imagine making a living, the only world where and if you are segregated away from family members, from the 30 cousins you have, and the 8 siblings you have, and the numerous friends and family members and rabbanim you have, that's a lot to lose. And so the more common frame in those environments, or I would say the ordinary frame, is to believe that somehow it'll work out and to get married anyway. And so this film is really kind of relevant to those communities. And we are quietly, in very respectful and careful ways, finding the right rabbis, counselors, social workers, educators to share this film with.
So I'd like to combine a few questions and ask you about how the plight of the heterosexual spouse is partially addressed, and which has rarely been addressed in other contexts. And so we saw that 2 ex-wives appeared, but there were no ex-husbands. Can you reflect on why and how the voice of the spouse or ex-spouse can be raised effectively? And further, one of our viewers was wondering if the film was simply too gentle in its portrayal of everyone's pain.
Well, we'll talk about the gentleness of the film in a minute, but let me deal with the first question first. It's an interesting feature of these social problems that the the story gets told from the vantage point of, kind of the most dramatic, narratives, or at least the ones that seem to appear, front and center. And so, particularly in an open society, the thought that one would deny one's own needs for the sake of communal and familial expectations and get married anyway. And so that is the story that often gets told. And and there are organizations, ours included, that are attempting to help the queer community deal with the nature of religious exclusion, and what honestly has to be described as kind of oppression in some frames that is experienced, but rarely, and this is to Rabbi Vardy's credit, rarely has the collateral damage to straight spouses been described so well, and so poignantly. It's really clear that the absence of a narrative of what a 16-year-old boy or girl should do if they are experiencing themselves as gay, the absence of models of engagement that make it possible to live an adult life, have really terrible consequences, not only for the gay people who make bad choices, but for the people who they marry, who are unwitting, guinea pigs to their attempt to make it work. Rabbis, as you heard in the film, and while it's, again, rarer and rarer in the modern Orthodox community this happens, but it still does happen in the Haredi community, is rabbis used to say, and some still do, don't worry, get married, it'll all work out. The implication is that same-sex desire is aberrant, and when you get inside of a sexual situation that's quote unquote normal, your natural, male or female impulses will kick in, and you'll realize that you're straight. That was right. But as one of our panelists who has spoken at many of our post-panel discussions, Moti Salzberg, says, can you imagine a therapeutic solution to a problem that basically solves a problem on the back of somebody else's undisclosed risk? Like, can you imagine attempting to figure out if you are capable of loving a woman by marrying her, and you'll see, like, the risk that you are imposing on somebody is enormous, and you're not even sharing it. Now, let me go, there's one step further that's really actually shocking, is that you mentioned this in your earlier question. There's so little space to talk about sexual need, desire, and experience that when indeed prospective husbands, as you heard from Mordechai Vardy's daughters, when they share with the women they're dating that they have been attracted to men, the women don't know quite how to make sense of it. And often these are really lovely, sensitive men who they've fallen for emotionally, and they want to help them. So because they do not have the information and the information about themselves, and the information really about the objective information about sexuality, they don't know even how to assess what is told them. And so they can end up marrying even after they've been told, as you heard in the film, right? Is that a woman says, well, coming back from mikvah, why aren't, And why aren't you coming to me? And the husband says, well, didn't I told you when we got married. And of course he did, but there was no frame for her to grasp because she had no experience or knowledge of what sexuality was all about. So, and I think that that's probably more common, again, in Israel in many sectors. I would say it's, again, less common in the modern Orthodox frame, but still very common in the Hasidic and the Haredi frames. Now, you mentioned about whether or not this was too gentle. I'll tell you a secret. This is just the wisdom of good filmmaking. Is that, yeah, if you want to basically shame your opponent and carry a banner, you can tell all the gory details in a fashion that feels honest and articulates, pain without reservation. But if you want to actually affect the system, you actually have to be hearable to your opponents. This was true in Trembling Before God as well. Sorry, not Rabbi, he's my friend, he's not a rabbi. Simcha Dabowski. Sandy Simcha Dabowski did a film called Trembling Before God that, as you mentioned, I took around the world with him to screenings really all over the world, in South America and Eastern Europe and in the Ukraine for that matter. He described Orthodox Jews struggling, who were gay. And there was a question, why didn't you have like conservative and reform rabbinic authorities and rabbis and people finding their space in those places? And his answer was simple, is that if you wanted to solve this problem and get discourse to happen, you had to make the film hearable to the people for whom it will mean the most to listen. And that is why the film may come off to certain folks, and I understand why, as overly cautious and gentle. Believe me, the rabbis who watch it in the traditional community do not experience it that way at all.
So it's intentionally restrained.
I think good filmmaking tends to do that.
So I want to let everyone know that we're coming to the last of our advanced questions, which I'm going to pose to Rabbi Greenberg in just a moment. So this is your last opportunity. If you have questions for him, please post them in the chat and I will take care of passing them along. Our final advanced question is, how could the film be used to spur deeper understanding and engagement in traditional communities? Do you think other traditional communities like evangelicals, Catholics, and Mormons might find the content helpful?
Well, let's first talk about, how films change the world, because I think they can. A film like this will accomplish a couple of things. First, its broad reception. Talk about it, articles written about it, engagement on it, will make people in the more traditional communities curious and eager to see it. And that is a process that takes time. When we took this film, when Dabowski and I carried the film across the world, we were shut down in many places. And this was, albeit it was 20 years ago, but we were shut down by secular institutions. In South Africa, we had a screening in the JCC, and last minute they shut us down. And it was only a Supreme Court judge that called up the JCC and said he would personally sue them if they didn't. Like there's great resistance in many communities to ask hard questions. You know, I'll share this other story again, not about this film, but it relates. We took this film to Trembling Before God, which is, if you haven't seen it, you should. I think it's available in various ways on YouTube. And if you can't find it, reach out to me and I'll find a way to get it to you. It was shown in South America at the national, kind of Jewish communal meeting that happens once every 2 years in South America, and many of the rabbis in South America are Orthodox rabbis. In fact, they're Chabad. So I had 17 Chabad rabbis watch the film, and the head of the Chabad contingent in South America comes over to me and says, "Steve, harasta et banai," which means, "Steve, you've destroyed my boys." And I said, "Why?" He said, "They don't like a good question to which they don't have a good answer." So here's the challenge. The challenge is to get people to pay attention to questions that are disruptive. And none of us, look, try to show a movie to the executives of Exxon about the dangers of climate change. I mean, disruptive movies are hard. And nonetheless, they do the work of emotionally and intellectually getting through resistance. Because when you have a conversation with someone, they're trying to convince you of something. When you watch a documentary, you're just listening to people tell their stories. So this film, like other documentary films, in its simplicity, just tells our story. And there's nothing more powerful than a story, because arguments can always be, I can always fight back for an argument and say, I disagree with your argument. But how do you disagree with a story? So that's the first thing I'm going to say, is that this film will be used. It's already, as you heard Rabbi Vardy say, it is being used by young gay, collegiates struggling to come out to their parents, saying, "Ima, Abba, I need you to watch this film and talk with me." That's already happening, right, in Israel. And eventually, I think it'll happen here. We are using it quietly, as I said, to bring communities to respond. Here's the fundamental question in the film. One of the richnesses of Orthodox life is that it's with people. It's, traditional Jewish life is rich because it's Shabbos meals and preparation for them, and building sukkahs and hiding the afikomen and staying up all night on Shavuos and learning and getting dressed up for Purim with family members and kids, and and hanging out with cousins and siblings and friends and laughing and a schnapps after Kiddush. It's so intensely social and religiously alive. And it all is pushing young people toward repeating the precious experiences that they've had by getting married and having kids. And so when you are 16 in this community and you are feeling like your life, you're not going to marry an opposite sex person and have lots of babies. That's not how it's going to go. And you don't know what God wants from you. You don't know what the community can ask of you. And here's the point that is so crucial in this film. No one is giving you guidance. No one. There are no models, or very few, and there are very few religious models. How many gay frum couples do they see sending their kids to yeshiva and into Jewish summer camp and having big seders and so it is beginning to happen. I want to say that I've been very happy to have done the commitment ceremonies of, at this point, nearly a dozen from gay couples, and more are, want to do this. And we are at this moment where 20 years ago, if you were gay, the only options were lying to yourself and others, or life, and lifelong, or in getting married, or being celibate, or leaving. Today, it is slowly emerging that you can find a partner and get on with life. And if the community doesn't accept you, you think God does. And you just get on with life. So that is beginning, and there's a groundswell. We do these programs for parents, and we gave our parents a survey. All these religious parents, I mean, young Israel from parents, and because their kid come out doesn't mean they're not from anywhere. They're still observant. And we asked them, do you want your kid to be in a same-sex relationship and be happy? 96% said yes. Because who doesn't want their kid to find love and companionship? You really want your child to be lifelong, to live in a lifelong celibate relationship? Really? Like a lifelong celibate, like, no relationship, meaning being alone. No one really wants that for their kids. So, two of the guys I did a wedding for 2 years ago now have 2 little girls. And they're sending them to a Jewish day school, and life is going on. And their parents are very happy. So what we are aiming for with this film is 2 things. One is to encourage queer Jews being raised in Orthodox environments. Go ahead and build your life. Don't decide that you have to either lie to yourself and others or leave. So that's the first message I'm trying to put forward. By the way, there is I should give it a plug, is that Moran Nakar and Avigail Sperber have a series of shorts called Holy Closet, which is about this. It's about queer people putting together Orthodox lives. Just 8-minute, shorts. And we're going to help shepherd that through the community as well, because until you see the possibilities, I myself, I have to be honest, when I first discovered I was gay, I wrote, and when I first finally accepted it, because I knew from the time I was 10, but when I first fully accepted it, I wrote an article under a pseudonym, Rabbi Yaakov Livado, Jacob alone, quoting a verse from Genesis. And in that article, it leads, I'm an Orthodox rabbi and I'm gay, but I didn't say who I was. I just wrote the article in 1993, Gayness and God. And that article has a line that I think for then was so true, is that I want a woman at my Shabbos table and a man in my bed. And why? Because I couldn't imagine what it would be like to have a man at my Shabbos table. These things you have to experience and see and live for them to be real. And then as soon as I actually found love and began to have people over, and my partner's an amazing cook, and we love to sing together, like all of a sudden, what was unthinkable became thinkable. So the point of this is two things: to get queer people to do the unthinkable, and it'll become thinkable. And that is to live a traditional Jewish life in faith and in commitment and in observance and in celebration, and be gay, or be trans, or be part of the LGBT community. And the second thing is for rabbis to have more in their tool bag than be celibate for the rest of your life or marry against your orientation. Those 2 have been the only 2 frames for guidance. It's no longer acceptable. And so increasingly, we are looking to rabbis to give us better guidance. If you can, there are a lot of things rabbis want to say no to. So tell us what does the yes look like? How can we construct reasonably thriving adult lives with love, intimacy, and companionship? Anybody would want that. There's a wax rabbinic. The mitzvah of va'avta l'reacha kamocha, love thy neighbor as yourself, according to the Gemara and Maimonides, the Rambam quotes it, is that whatever you would want for yourself, do for others. So my question is, do you want intimacy and love and companionship in your life? Did you want it? And do you cherish it now? And if you do, you should want it for us.
Well, we have one final question from our viewers, and that's do you happen to know if, since there is such an emphasis on family, if any of the gay couples who do come together in Israel, do they adopt? Do they choose surrogacy? What are the paths for them to parenthood and family life? And then after you answer that question, if you have any final closing thoughts for our viewers, I would welcome them.
Sure. So, this is a challenge for the gay community, because we've often not fully articulated what it's like to discover that one is gay when when you've been eager, and more than that, you've longed for being a parent. And then how do you make it happen? So, fortuitous for women, it's easier for two women to work that out. For two men, it's really a really huge challenge, and adoption is one path that works. Surrogacy as well is really when I and my partner finally decided to really take serious our desire to be parents, we took the lead of Israeli friends of ours. And there was, at the time, an openness in India. There was a reproductive clinic that was working with gay men to help them, make families. So we contacted this organization and went to India, and at some point later, we brought home a wonderful baby girl who, Amalia, now is 11 years old, and I'm working with her on her bat mitzvah that will happen this winter. She's off at camp in summer camp at a B'nai Akiva camp, and having a marvelous time. I hope. I haven't heard back yet, but I'm hoping the silence is that she's having a great time. The challenges are real, though, because it's both expensive and challenging to find surrogacy that is, that works and that, meets everybody's needs. And there are moral challenges to it that I don't want to ignore. Adoption is easier in that way, but also has its own challenges. Here's what I want to say to the organized American Jewish community, is that you can't be willing to get behind LGBTQ inclusion and not get behind the Jewish Family Service opening up resources to help us build families. So if you're really serious, then you've got to find ways to help us build families. And, that ought to be high on your priority list, because many of us want to do that. We want to be part, of the ongoing, promise to Avram and Sarah to be, a blessing to all the families of the earth through our children. I do want to say that there are other ways of living rich lives. I don't want to claim that being single is a blight, nor being, deciding not to have children. There are other ways to leave the world a better place than you found it, other ways to invest. You know, this is the whole covenant with Abraham, you know, is grounded in the possibility of a future that you will never see. Committing to a promise of redemption, of the betterment of the world, of the tikkun olam, the fixing of a broken world in ways that you won't live to see. There are lots of ways that one can do that. You don't have to be a parent to do that. I also want to say that there are ways to live rich lives as a single person. There are ways to have deep relationships that are, you know, and I don't want, you know, a bid for our ability to find love and marry to be an accusation for people who want to and have chosen to live single lives, and or, you know, or end up doing so and are doing a great job of doing it. So it is just the fact that it's, you know, in the first chapter in Genesis, we learned that God is aware that it's hard to be alone. Lo tov hayot adam levado. And so none of us should be told that because of the way you were born and because of the way your inner life is structured, you can't have intimacy, love, and companionship. So hopefully this film and the work shaped around it will do two things. It'll open queer people to the possibilities. It'll open educators and rabbis to help shaping the imagination of what that should look like and giving us better guidance. And the last thing I want to say is that, you know, some of this work looks like, you know, oh, those poor queer people, you know, we ought to help them. But I want to put a different spin on this too. When you tell us we don't deserve adult lives, you lose our resources, our energy, our vitality, our soulfulness. You lose us to the production of a rich and thriving Jewish culture. We are a resource. Our experiences, unusual as they may be, are a piece of the human condition that enriches humanity, and you have stuff to learn. Now, let me just put it in the other side, is that the queer community is in need of the depth of wisdom that can come from a millennial tradition. And it's not such an easy, or I don't think satisfying solutions to walk away from, you know, 4,000 years of one of the richest experiments in you know, ethics and wisdom that the world has ever seen. Like, why do that? So on both sides, you deserve us to stay, and the enrichment of our lives when we do will be palpable and really exciting for everybody.
Thank you for those final thoughts, Rabbi Greenberg, and thank you again for being here with us tonight and for speaking. And I want to thank everyone who joined us for being here and for participating in the Queer Jewish Arts Festival. I hope you'll join us on Sunday at noon for our discussion about the other film being presented as part of the festival, Trans Kids. The panel will include a filmmaker and one of the subjects of that film. Once again, that's Sunday at noon. And I want to thank everyone for being here, and we hope to see you also on Sunday.
And
Thanks again.
One more thing before you go.
Oh, please.
My head. So I had an organization called Eshel. We are a support education advocacy organization. And so if you need support, if you are yourself LGBTQ and you want to connect to the tradition, or you are an Orthodox Jew and you want to understand more about our work, if you are a parent and need to understand your child better, if you just want to, you know, explore the educational elements we have in our program, please connect to eshelonline.org. And if there's any reason you need to be in touch with me, please know that I am eager to hear from you. Steve@eshelonline.org. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thanks for sharing that. And if anyone didn't catch those those bits of contact information, you all have my email address. You can write to me and I will make sure that you get it. Okay. Thank you again. Good night, everyone.